Once I did too much. I made a copy of the Schönbrunn Castle in Vienna.
Yes?
And we needed 500 builders to build it.
Once I did too much. I made a copy of the Schönbrunn Castle in Vienna, yes. And we needed 500 builders to build it. When the king of the waltz suddenly stumbled on stage at age 75, the music world held its breath. How does a performer who once filled stadiums with joy confront a crisis that threatens not just his career, but his very balance? Behind André Rieu's dazzling success lies a story of deep personal battles, relentless illness, and an unyielding spirit that refused to surrender. From a childhood marked by harsh discipline to a viral illness that nearly ended his musical journey, his life reads like a dramatic symphony itself. The crisis on stage. At the age of 75, André Rieu, the famed king of the waltz, faced a moment that shook the music world to its core. During a high-profile series of concerts in Mexico City in early 2024, the maestro experienced a sudden and alarming physical collapse mid-performance. What was supposed to be a triumphant return to the stage turned into a nightmare as fever, confusion, and breathlessness overwhelmed him. 4 concerts had to be ended prematurely, angering over 40,000 ticket holders and forcing the entire orchestra to cancel the remainder of the tour. This unexpected breakdown sent ripples of concern through his dedicated fan base and the classical music community alike. Despite decades of filling stadiums worldwide, Rieu suddenly found himself vulnerable and unsteady, struggling to maintain the dignity that had always defined his presence. Backstage, whispered rumors circulated about the severity of his condition. Reports spoke of jet lag, altitude sickness, and a stubborn flu colliding in a perfect storm. The physical toll was clear, but what made this moment even more jarring was the suddenness and public nature of the collapse. For a man who built his career in flawless performances and tireless touring, this marked a painful fracture in his carefully crafted image. This crisis was not an isolated incident, but the culmination of years of mounting health challenges that had quietly shadowed his career. Though few fully understood it, André had been battling a persistent vulnerability since 2010 when a viral infection targeted his inner ear, undermining his equilibrium and threatening his very ability to perform. That early scare forced him to cancel tours and retreat from the relentless pace that had defined his life. While the world believed he made a full recovery, the truth was far more complex. The damage left him physically altered and fragile. For years following his initial illness, André pushed himself to resume the frenetic lifestyle of a touring virtuoso, an ambition that hid the truth of an unsettled balance and intermittent dizziness. The pressure to maintain his reputation as the unstoppable maestro clashed with the physical realities of his body's limitations. It wasn't until the public collapse in Mexico City that the gravity of the situation became impossible to ignore. Suddenly, the man who once seemed invincible was forced to confront a new reality where his health dictated his music. The aftermath behind the scenes was very chaotic and painful. The orchestra mid-tour disbanded, and as a result concerts were cancelled, flights, snorts, reversed, and refunds were issued. All this came as a disruption to André's fan base, but also to the orchestra and team who had been his supporters for decades. This disconnection revealed weaknesses that were previously unseen due to the stage's glowing spotlight. At the same time, it prepared a crucial change in the management of André's career and health going forward. There was a question: how could a performer at the peak of his career come to such a breaking point? The answer was buried deep in the years of personal trials, health issues, and the pressure of touring without a break. It suggested that the past injuries had not fully healed and that the health problems had been worsened by a strict performance schedule. The collapse in Mexico City in many ways was an inevitable climax to a long-concealed war. This moment was a turning point, a forced slowing down that no artist desires, but one that becomes unavoidable with passing time and the right circumstances. It uncovered the human frailty that was behind the bigger-than-a-life picture, teaching the world that no amount of fame could protect a person from getting sick or tired. However, this crisis also contained the emergence of a new chapter that was going to need recreation, endurance, and reliance on the closest ones. The rest of André Rieu's story cannot be told without understanding the foundations laid in his youth, where these of both his passion and resilience first took root, shaping the man who would later become a global icon. childhood and early influences. André Rieu's early life was marked by strict discipline and emotional distance, creating a childhood that was far from nurturing. Born on October 1, 1949, he was the third of 6 children in a household where authoritarian rules reigned, largely set by his father, a renowned and feared conductor. At home, love was described by André not as warmth, but as a cold, abstract concept rarely demonstrated through affection or encouragement. His mother's obsession with academic achievement and skill left little room for imagination or creative freedom, turning his artistic impulses into perceived weaknesses. It was within this austere environment that young André began his journey into music. At 5 years old, a turning point came when an 18-year-old violin mentor entered his life, offering a gentle alternative to the rigidness he knew. Unlike his parents, she coaxed him to feel through music rather than simply perform it, planting the seeds of emotional connection with his instrument. In her music guidance, he found freedom, a tremor that was neither love nor romance, but the spark of life itself. This experience ignited a passion that propelled him forward even as his home life offered no comfort. As grew into his teenage years, André's burgeoning love for waltzes clashed sharply with his father's stern expectations. His father's harsh rejection of this style of music was more than a disagreement over taste. It felt like a direct attempt to extinguish his creative spirit. The repeated admonishment that he wasn't raised to play waltzes echoed through his youth, leaving deep emotional scars. This conflict between personal passion and parental authority would later fuel his determination to carve out his own artistic path. Amidst this tension, a pivotal relationship changed the course of his life. In 1968, André's decision to be with Marjorie rather than conform to his parents' rigid expectations resulted in fierce rejection from his mother, who demanded Marjorie leave immediately. Feeling the weight of this familial repudiation, André chose to leave his childhood home that very night, severing ties with a household that had offered no sanctuary. From then on, his family home became an untouched shell. A symbol of absence rather than belonging. Despite filling arenas with adoring fans, the silence from his family remained a haunting void. His parents never attended his performances, a fact that underscored the emotional distance that had defined his early years. This absence left wounds that no amount of applause could heal, prompting André to spend years in therapy grappling with the hollowness of his upbringing. It was his music above all that ultimately allowed him to feel seen and understood. The violin turned into more than a musical instrument. It was a cord linking him to the world outside his shattered family life. He was allowed to breathe in freedom and expression through playing. This strong relationship with music was his source of strength during tough moments and helped him to see what music could become. An experience shared by all humans for the purpose of joy and connection. After formal orchestral training and years coping with the often sterile environment of traditional classical music, André's rebellious character shone through. The 12 and more musicians playing under the name of the Mastery's Salon Orchestra, which he established in 1978, were the critics' and large stage's three-way love triangle breakup. 12 young and vibrant musicians that André had assembled planned to play only for loving their music. Small towns and humble community halls were the sites of these first performances, which already had the human element mixed up with sound. It was an undisruptive revolution that had hope and authenticity at its core, not fame or wealth. This blend of personal strength, creative rebellion, and partnership set the stage for something truly new, one that would redefine classical music and inspire audiences worldwide to reclaim joy through sound, breaking tradition. In 1987, André Rieu took a bold step by formally founding the Johann Strauss Orchestra, marking the beginning of a radical mission to restore the heartbeat to classical music. Unlike conventional orchestras cloaked in solemn black tailcoats, Rieu's ensemble wore vibrant colors and embraced a joyful atmosphere. This departure from tradition was both a statement and an invitation to celebrate music with light, movement, and dance rather than austere formality. The inaugural New Year's Day premiere in 1988, music exploded with energy, lights, and laughter, defiantly challenging critics who dismissed the approach. Despite ridicule from traditionalists who labeled the act as musical pornography, audiences flocked to the concerts in growing numbers. Rieu wasn't merely selling shows. He was giving people hope. A space where families could dance and grandparents could cry, all united by the healing power of music. His promise to avoid the solemn hush that drives people away resonated deeply, breaking classical music free from its reputation as remote and inaccessible. This new model fostered emotional connection and revived the genre for a fresh generation. By 1995, the orchestra had reached a defining moment on one of Europe's grandest stages, the UEFA Champions League final in Vienna. As the orchestra played Szykowicz's Waltz, the entire stadium softened. Football fans paused and applauded with the music easing the tension of competitive sport into an unforgettable moment of grace. The timing of Ajax's goal alongside the soaring music created a legend that elevated both the orchestra and Rieu to new heights of popularity and acclaim. The success was unprecedented. The Johann Strauss Orchestra spent 19 weeks at number 1 in the Netherlands, selling millions of records worldwide. The momentum spread to Australia, where over 38,000 fans filled stadium seats for a live performance that felt like a fairy tale. Remarkably, 8 of the top 10 DVDs in the country belonged to Rieu, placing him alongside global pop icons and solidifying his status as a musical phenomenon. This era of triumph did not come without detractors. Among the harshest critics were purists who rejected Rieu's festive approach as a mockery of classical art. Yet the palpable joy and sincerity delivered to audiences worldwide won hearts. His concerts became places where emotion was not restrained but celebrated, bringing music to people in a way that transcended traditional boundaries. The divide between critics and fans underscored a larger cultural shift in how classical music was experienced. Rieu's ability to bridge worlds, combining the elegance of waltz with the energy of popular spectacle, reshaped the perception of what a classical concert could be. His mission was notably artistic, but deeply human, to rejuvenate music's heartbeat and offer hope to those who might have felt alienated by rigid traditions. This bold reimagining captured imaginations and transformed venues worldwide into places of celebration rather than distant reverence. The orchestra's rise was fueled by more than performance. It was backed by a network of management and support. Marjorie, ever-present and exacting, managed bookings, ghostwriting, and finances, making the vision a practical reality. Her steady hand ensured that each step forward was sustainable, allowing the magic on stage to continue growing without faltering. This partnership was integral to forging the new path in classical entertainment. The challenges ahead would test not only his musical genius, but his physical and emotional limits, revealing the man behind the grand spectacle, global triumphs. By the mid-1990s, André Rieu and the Johann Strauss Orchestra had begun to define a new era of classical music, combining traditional elegance with unprecedented popular appeal. Their moment of breakthrough came in 1995 at the UEFA Champions League final in Vienna, where Rieu's orchestra took to the pitch performing Szykowicz's Waltz. The stadium fell into an unexpected hush as football fans paused, swayed, and clapped along to the gentle strains of the music. The tension of the game melted away, replaced by a shared moment of grace and unity, imbuing the event with a timeless quality. This striking fusion of sport and music became legendary just as the orchestra's popularity exploded. The Johann Strauss Orchestra soared to number 1 in the Netherlands, holding that position for an astonishing 19 weeks. This was a feat virtually unheard of for classical music artists and signaled a seismic shift in listener tastes. Millions of records sold globally confirmed that Rieu was no longer confined to classical circles, but was crossing into mainstream consciousness with ease. Australia soon followed suit, embracing Rieu's joyful sound with enthusiasm. Over 38,000 people gathered in Melbourne Stadium seats to witness what many described as a fairy tale brought to. His appeal was visible in the dominance of his DVDs, which held 8 of the top 10 spots on the country charts. This remarkable reach placed him shoulder to shoulder with world-renowned pop icons such as Pink and AC/DC, further affirming his widespread influence. Yet, not everyone embraced this new classical renaissance. Traditionalists in the music world recoiled at Rieu's style, dismissing it as musical pornography and mocking the joyful lights, colorful gowns, and festive atmosphere that defined his concerts. To these critics, joy had no place in serious art. Despite their disdain, audiences loyal to Rieu found a profound emotional connection in the experience. Families danced together, grandparents wiped tears, and emotion found a rare and welcoming stage. Rieu's decided nonconformity with the prevailing solemn hush at classical concerts was the mainstay of his artistic endeavor. He was aiming not only to please the audience, but also to heal and to make music to the people again, a dynamic, vivacious art that could be experienced by everybody. The change in the way of thinking about orchestral music happened to the whole audience because Rieu was ready to bring the public into the concert hall and not just keep them at a distance. For numerous people, his concerts were occasions of release and mourning. The victory of the symphony was not only a matter of its manifested powers. It was the application of the orchestra's excellent business acumen and careful planning. The main force being Marjorie, who built a solid ground with her invisible labor on reservations, contracts, and strategy. Her consistent presence ensured that the ensemble would last even when the spotlight was most intense on Rieu. They came to redefine classical music, experiencing and accepting it in a new conflicting way. The very passion that propelled André forward would soon collide with the fragile limits of his health. Health battles emerge. In 2010, at the height of his fame and relentless touring schedules, André Rieu was blindsided by a viral infection that attacked his vestibular nerve, the delicate part of the inner ear responsible for balance. For a violinist whose craft relied on perfect equilibrium, this was devastating. His world began to spin uncontrollably, and nothing, not even the ground beneath him, felt stable. Bedridden and disoriented, he faced a terrifying unknown, unlike any other challenge in his life. Doctors ordered immediate rest, and the man known for his unstoppable energy was forced into an unprecedented halt. Concert tours were cancelled, and the rigorous pace of his life collapsed. Years of rigorous training and pride in physical stamina gave way to months of vulnerability and uncertainty. This was more than a simple illness. It was a fracture in the foundation of his identity, shaking him to his core. Recovery proved slow and difficult. Conventional therapies failed to bring relief, prolonging the period of isolation and physical distress. However, a turning point came from an unexpected source. A letter from an Australian fan who shared how specialized vestibular exercises helped restore balance in his own battle with the same infection. Desperate for normalcy, André embraced the advice, beginning a painstaking journey back to the stage. Gradually distortions lessened, and after months of withdrawal he stood again. First unsteadily, then with increasing strength. His eventual return to touring was hailed as a triumphant comeback, signaling not just physical recovery, but a restoration of his public persona. Fans and critics believed he was back to his full brilliance. Yet the invisible scars remained. His balance was fragile, and the ear once assaulted remained a vulnerable spot. Management acknowledged that those symptoms were dormant, the risk of recurrence loomed. Any new episode would be dangerous, especially during live performances. This worry created persistent tension within the team, compelling a new approach to his touring and health management. The man who once gloried in endurance now faced the necessity of caution. The following years saw moments of renewed difficulty. In 2016, a very personal loss struck. Rieu, a trombonist and longtime friend, passed away suddenly in his sleep during a European tour. André confronted grief that shook his close-knit orchestra family, forcing him to cancel multiple concerts in an emotional response. The deep bond within the orchestra mirrored a family's heartbreak, and the weight of loss influenced André's emotional and professional life profoundly. Despite setbacks, Rieu maintained determination to perform. Even in 2019, while battling a vicious flu, he took to the stage, smiling through sweats and fever. Observant fans noticed the strain beneath the surface. His resilience was tempered by physical struggle. His commitment never wavered, but the battle between passion and health became ever more visible. The storm that would truly shatter his strength emerged in Mexico City in early 2024, when a collision of jet lag, altitude, and illness forced an abrupt halt to his tour and exposed the limits of his endurance. The ensuing chaos underscored a harsh truth. No amount of willpower could override the fragility of the body. This marked not an end but a critical threshold that demanded new strategies, support, and acceptance of vulnerability. As the demands of his health grew more urgent, so too did the role of those who would guard his well-being, ushering in a new chapter defined by careful management and redefined purpose, loss and grief. Even as André Rieu battled physical ailments, the weight of personal loss added a profound layer of grief that touched his very core. In 2016, during a European tour in Leeds, tragedy struck unexpectedly when Roar MKS, a trombonist and longtime friend, passed away quietly in his sleep. The news hit the orchestra like an earthquake. Merckx was not only a colleague but had become like a brother to André. There was no time for hesitation. Concerts in Nottingham, London, Birmingham, and Glasgow were immediately cancelled as mourning settled over the ensemble. This loss rippled through the close-knit group, which often referred to itself as a family, making the void deeply felt both on stage and off. André openly admitted the devastation, revealing how the absence of someone so integral shook his focus. The burden of grief made every performance that followed carry a heavier emotional weight. The music colored by memories and sorrow. It was a reminder that even amidst success and acclaim, life's fragility remained ever present. Despite the pain, André's commitment to music never faltered. In 2019, he took to the stage while battling a severe